This is the second video for the 10th class of Social Psychological Perspectives on Health. In the first video, I talked about how social identity is social identity influences our perceptions of social support. So in order for social support to be effective, it is really important that social identity, uh, the recipients and then providers of social support share social identity. And also I talked about how social identity is fluid so that depending on the way they categorize themselves could be very different in each context. And then the way they define themselves influences how they make a second primary appraisal as well as secondary appraisal. Okay. And then because social identity really influences both primary appraisal and secondary appraisal, the way the degree that they experience stress will be also very much different depending on how they categorize themselves, either categorizing themselves as an individual or based on a group membership, and also depending on which group membership they categorize themselves, their response to stresses would be different. Okay. And then um, hold on. Excuse me. So in this video, at the end of the first video, I talked that it's really important that you belong to positive groups in order to get benefits from belonging to groups. And then this integrated social identity model of stress focuses on two aspects of group features. It's not really about either positive or negative, but this model looks at two factors. And one of them is permeability, and the other one is status stability. So this model specifies the way how people of different groups respond to stressors differently. And then as we have seen, low social identifiers tend to see their group more permeable. Remember? So this is basically the summary of the model. So first, you can look at the level of identification. Okay. So you can first look at the level of identification, and then if people only weakly identify with a group, then they tend to perceive the group as permeable, meaning that they can always leave the group. Okay. And then if they have only low identification and then they see that the group is permeable, then their strategy for achieving positive social identity would be personal mobility, meaning that they will just leave the group and then they try to belong to new group, and that gives better status or better support. Yes, course of action resulting from this strategy would be, yes, join high status group. And the preferred coping strategy would be individual avoidance. So basically they try to avoid problems. And then, but because they try to belong to new group, level of in-group support would be low. So basically, they will lose the support that they used to have, and then also they would not be receiving as much support as they could if they stay in the old group, because new group members see them as something different, or see them as someone who came from different groups. So basically, they do not really welcome well. And that's implication for stressor would be they will just escape from stressor. And then as I have said before, if people escape from stresses, they may have experienced even stronger stress in the future. Okay. But still, even if people weakly identify, they may perceive the group as impermeable. And then perceived legitimacy and stability of group. So basically, if they cannot really leave the group, then that's the case when the status of the group is stable. In this case, people may take the strategy of social creativity, which means that they try to, yeah, I think you can just look at here. So basically, they try to change meaning of identity, or they try to compare themselves with different groups, or they try to compare different aspects of the group with other groups, so that they can find positive aspects of the group that they belong. And preferred coping strategies would be individual or collective denial. So basically they try to say that, okay, there's no really problem. There are good uh good aspects of our groups, or if we compare us with those groups, then we are still much better than those. So they try to deny the presence of the problem. And level of in-group support would be moderate to high, because basically they stay in the group that they have been belonging, and the implication for stress will be reduced effect stress. So basically, because they have social support, and then they use social creativity to basically deny the problem, so they can somewhat reduce effects of stress, at least compared to those who have weak identification and belong to permeable groups. In the last one, if they strongly identify with their group, and if they perceive their group as impermeable, then they may perceive their status of the group as insecure, because the status of their group would be basically taken by other groups. So the strategy for achieving positive social identity will be social comparison, and thus they may engage in conflict, or they may show open hostility, or they may show antagonism. Okay? And thus they will take collective resistance. And because they belong to, I mean, they stay a group that they have been belonging, and then because they have strong identification, the level of in-group support is high, and they basically try to challenge and attempt to remove stress. Okay, so maybe I think you can think of a case where a group is discriminated, or there are conflicts between groups. Okay. And then depending on how strongly individuals identify with their group, and how they perceive the permeability of their groups, they would take different strategies and actions, and they would have different levels of social support, and they would have different levels of stresses. You might think that low identifiers with low identifiers belonging to impermeable groups have the lower responses to stresses, but this group still deny the problem, deny the stressor, and thus they may experience stronger stress in the future. Compared to that, high identifiers belonging to impermeable groups, they try to change and attempt or remove stressor. And thus, they basically try to solve the problem. And thus, the stressors would be gone, and then they would not have much risk to experience stronger stressor in the future because of the stressor they are facing now. Okay. So after all, high identifiers may be well off compared to other people with low identification. Okay. So for as the conclusion of chapter 5, stress is not primarily a problem of biology, physiology, or personality. It is not simply a problem of culture, context, or environment. So biomedical, dispositional, or situational models cannot thoroughly explain the problems or causes of stress. And stress responses are determined by how people appraise stresses and their coping options. Biomedical approach may explain how people respond, what uh, their bio biology or physiological symptoms, or what kind of trajectory they would take. Biomedical approach may explain the trajectory of biological or physiological symptoms, but it doesn't really explain what kind of people would respond to that way, and then whether they will have low or high stresses. And these positional models, basically, it's not well supported by the research, and then it doesn't really explain what people should do. This kind of people would be like these this positional model explains that this kind of people would be like this, but it doesn't really explain what they could do. And situational models argue that, each event kind of determines how much stress people experience, but it doesn't well explain individual differences. And that's basically this textbook argues that the transactional model is better at explaining how people experience stresses. And people's appraisal. The important message of this textbook, I guess, is that people's appraisals vary as a function of groups they belong to and sense of identities that groups provide. So stress could deteriorate our health, or we could change them by reinterpreting or challenge them. So a stress process can be a positive experience or negative experience, depending on how you appraise the stresses, and the way you appraise the stresses can be changed by social identities. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 5. And as I have still some time, I will just pause here. And let me start chapter 8, depression. So according to some research, at least 20% of people have an experience of depression. And the majority of people with depression are socioeconomically disadvantaged or are in conflict-affected or developing countries, women, and are aged between 15 and 25 years. And when people say that, like I'm depressed, they tend to mean they are in low mood. But clinical depression means that individuals feel sad and anhedonia. Anhedonia anhedonia refers to reduced motivation, reduced anticipatory pleasure, reduced consummatory pleasure, and deficits in reinforcement learning. So basically, they cannot really feel good about doing something, and because they do not feel good about something, they are not motivated to do something again. And in the DSM-5, this is like a book that tells how to diagnose people in terms of their clinical symptoms. And so in the DSM-5, a reduced ability to experience pleasure or a diminished interest in engaging in pleasurable activities. This is basically if people have these kinds of symptoms, then they may be diagnosed as having depression. There are several cognitive symptoms they may show, such as hopelessness, rumination, and suicidal thoughts. And there are other emotional symptoms, such as they feel such that they may feel anger or guilt. And physiological symptoms such as they cannot really sleep, they may not have appetite, or they may have too much appetite. Well, I think in terms of depression, they tend to have lower appetite because basically they do not feel pleasure from eating something. And they may have lower energy levels. And behavioral symptoms, they tend to show withdrawal from normal activities. Okay, so well, basically, uh, depression, clinical depression is not really about feeling sad or feeling being in low mood, but it's more about withdrawal or lack of motivation, lack of pleasure. Okay. So while there are ways to treat depression, the number of people with depression is not reduced. So there are different treatments out there, but the number of people with depression is not reduced. So there must be problems. Okay, so some of the problems. Lack of progress in treatment of depression. So first, the problem with treatment of depression is that the treatments are expensive, and they are often only available in affluent areas. And because of that, treatments are accessible to people in urban areas of developed countries who have considerable financial and social capital and who tend to experience mild to moderate symptoms. And remember, the majority of people with depression are those socioeconomically disadvantaged or in developing countries. So, those who really need treatments do not have access to treatments, or they do not have financial capitals to cover their treatment fees. And other problems like, okay, so there are treatments available in affluent areas, and then there are some people with depression in affluent areas. But the problem is that even if they have access and they have opportunities to take treatment, they do not follow what doctors tell to do. And this is because the stigma of mental health, mental illness. So basically, people tend to think that if you have some mental illness, maybe there's something wrong with you, no? And so that they try to deny basically that they have some mental issues. And the other problems, other reason why they do not follow what doctors tell to do is that antidepressants, basically medicine, have some side effects, and such as sexual dysfunction, weight gain, or drowsiness. You know, maybe if they take antidepressant, they might feel a bit better, but at the same time they experience weight gain or drowsiness, and thus they may have other symptoms, and then they will just stop taking medicine. Another problem with depression is that is a high relapse rate. Basically, 25 to 50% of people will experience depression relapse within 18 months. Relapse means that they have depression again. And even if they do not have depression relapse within 18 months, 80% of the people diagnosed with depression will relapse at some point. So basically, most of them will experience depression again, even if they had treatment or even if cured, they had been cured. The average person who has experienced depression will have 4 depressive episodes across their lifespan, each of about 5 months duration. So basically, even if they get better at some point, they may experience depression episode, which may last about 5 months. And then even if they go through such depression episode, they may have another episode and another episode. Okay. So the current approaches what kind of approaches are there and how they understand depression. The biomedical model. So basically, the general public endorsed the oversimplified model of depression, which is a brain chemistry imbalance. So they believe that there's something wrong in their brain, and that's because they have depression. And this kind of belief in the biochemical model is associated with increased stigma and pessimism about the recovery. So belief in the biochemical model triggers essentialism. Essentialism is a belief that a fixed, hidden, underlying essence causes the observed properties of a category. So let's think of people with depression as a categorical group. So you can basically categorize people into depressed and non-depressed. And because people believe that depression is caused by problems in brain, they believe that there's something really wrong in there's something wrong with them. There is something that there is essence that they have within themselves that cause depression. Okay, so for example, people with depression are categorically different. People who believe that those with depression are categorically different from others, and such difference is caused by the underlying essence that depressed people have, and thus depression can be treated, and this view may even justify prejudice against depression. So, in terms of employment, if people come to work for your company, and then you realize that this applicant has an experience of depression, and then if you endorse this biochemical model, oversimplified chemical model, then you might believe that, okay, this person has an experience of depression and there must be something wrong with this person. Maybe there is an essence that makes this person get depressed. So if this person has an essence and such essence is fixed and not changeable, maybe this person will have depression again, and then this person may not be able to work in the future sometime. So this kind of reasoning or interpretation makes you to not hire this person, So just having an experience of depression can be a cause of discrimination. And then people may justify such depression. If the person cannot really work for my company, then I would lose some money from hiring this person. So it's not really, they try to say, it's not really discrimination, but this is more like a financial or a logical thought, right? And then based on biochemical model, there is a medicine, the most commonly prescribed drug for depression, which is called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs. And basically, this really tells how it works. And then this is the figure I draw. And so this is a nerve. Is it nerve? And then yeah. So basically, and then these yellow dots indicates serotonin. Serotonin is like brain chemicals that makes you feel relaxed or safe. Okay, and then this serotonin goes to another nerve, and then when it reaches, basically the serotonin has some message that makes you feel relaxed. But this serotonin could go to another nerve, but also could go back to the nerve that it came from. And if it came back to the original nerve, then the message does not go to another nerve, and thus you would not feel safe or relaxed. All right. And what SSRIs do is that they block some of the cells that retake serotonin so that there will be more serotonin between nerves, and then there are more chances that another nerve can take serotonin in so that individuals can feel safe and relaxed. Okay. However, research indicates that there are differences in brain function, chemistry, or structures between depressed and non-depressed people, but these are more likely to be results, but not causes. So it is not the imbalance of serotonin, but a cause that induce the imbalance to be treated. So which means that maybe there are differences between depressed and non-depressed people, but such difference is not a cause of depression, but more like correlates or could be even consequences of being depressed. So instead of treating the imbalance of serotonin, but there should be ways to treat the cause that creates the imbalance of serotonin. Okay, so biochemical approach, biochemical model try to treat the imbalance, and it has some effects, but it doesn't remove the cause of the imbalance and then cause of depression. So I think I will just stop here, and then yeah, this is the end of 10th class, and then I will keep covering the chapter 8 in the next class, the 11th class. Okay.